Hi, I'm Danny Brown, and today we're going to be making tagliatelle pasta with duck confit, sunchokes, red Swiss chard, pumpkin seed oil, and some fresh marjoram. This is a fantastic dish to do in the fall season, and the weather's getting cool out there. So we got a lot of cooking to do, we got a lot of ingredients. This is going to be a little bit of a tricky one, but I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you. So let's get started. All right, so now it's time to make the duck confit, and what you want to do is make sure that you give yourself 2 days before you make this pasta dish, because this actually takes some time. So I'm going to show you the way we do it in a restaurant, and I'm going to also show you a shortcut in case you want to buy this already made. So I have some Moulard duck legs here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a spice rub on it. It's essentially curing it overnight in the refrigerator for 12 hours. I have a little kosher salt. I have something called 4 spice. And in French, it's called 4 épices. We use some fresh garlic that we smash, a few sprigs of thyme, and a few sprigs rosemary. Now that I've gotten the herbs all over the table. What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna smash the garlic. And you just take a garlic clove, like so. There you go, smashed. And so we have our garlic. Now what I wanna do is I wanna season the duck, and I'm gonna season both sides. And I always season high because I don't want the salt to clump in one spot. So I'm gonna do the meat side, meaning not the skin side first. And I don't wanna salt it too much. All I'm trying to do is pull some moisture out of it. And so that's what we have on that side. I'm gonna go ahead and flip all of them. We'll do this side first. We're gonna give it a little bit of pepper. You can use black pepper, white pepper, whatever pepper you have. This is what this kind of looks like. And we do the same thing, we keep the pepper up high. And then I use the 4 spice. You could use a shaker if you want. I don't use too much because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and rub this in with my hand. And again, tomorrow, after this is dried in the refrigerator overnight, we're gonna wipe this with a towel. All we're looking to do is basically give the duck some flavor, and we're looking to dry it out a little bit. So that's the way that looks. I'm gonna season the other side. Same thing, up high, kosher salt. And you can really see those crystals hitting the duck. Same thing with the pepper. And there's really no exact recipe for something like this. What you're doing is you're trying to give it even distribution of seasoning and spices. Same thing again. And now what I like to do, a little massage, if you will, right? This way you just kind of rub that in. All right, and so what I do, I want to take herbs on this side, right? We're gonna flip it. And we're gonna put that down. The same thing with the rosemary. And I don't use as much rosemary. And I'm keeping this sort of whole, just like that. Now with the garlic, and what we're gonna do is you're pressing the garlic in with these herbs, turn it over. You could paste this too with salt if you didn't want to do this rough, sort of rustic application, but I'm going to show you why we're going to do this, because there's a little trick to the reason why I want to keep everything whole. I'm not going to share it with you yet. You got to watch this. And if you want to, and you're like, want to give the thyme a little bit of bruising, you can. And the same thing with the rosemary, just a little bit. All right, I'll let you in on a secret. What we're gonna do after we pull this off tomorrow, we're gonna add these herbs whole into the fat, which is gonna help flavor this. All right, so now it's time to get ready, put this in the refrigerator, and give it at least 12 hours. All right, so we pulled the duck out of the refrigerator where it's been sitting overnight. We had bruised our thyme and rosemary to release the flavor and smashed garlic and salt and the 4 spice and the pepper. It's on the wire rack. That's where it was placed overnight so that it would dry evenly. The last thing we wanted to do was season this to dry the duck and then have it sit right in contact. The next step that we want to do right now is we want to save all this, but I want to wipe the duck legs. And all this is gonna do is remove the step that we did last time. It's removing moisture. And we're now gonna place these beautiful legs submerged into some duck fat that I had just gently melted. So, and we're doing the skin side up, and there's a reason why it's skin side up. We want the top of the skin to render into the pot. I don't want the flesh side up because I want to make sure that this is really, really submerged in that fat. It's such a gentle cooking medium. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, all right, so this is all wiped down. Right into the fat like this. Beautifully submerged. And what I want to do, we want to take some of the garlic. This is a little trick that I learned from a guy that had a wine bar in Paris called Bar de Leaks, long defunct at this point. But one of the things that he did with his duck confit is he took some thyme, right? Some rosemary and some garlic cloves. Goes in the fat, and this really adds beautiful flavor to the confit. So that's it. All we've done is we've added some fat, and this will cook gently. Now the next goal for us is to get this in a 250-degree oven for 3 hours. So let's get it in the oven. All right, duck has been in the oven for 3 hours at 250 degrees, gently cooked. One of the things that we want to look for to determine whether the duck is cooked or not is whether the leg bone is exposed, and it is. And that happens naturally on its own. If you still see all the skin and cartilage on the leg bone, that is a pretty good indication that you're going to need to return the duck to the oven. Generally, 3 hours at 250 degrees should really yield this kind of a result. So this is really kind of what we're looking for. We're gonna shred this, but now if you wanted to just sear this as an entree and get the skin all crispy, I would just leave this in the fat, let it cool down, and the juices will sort of redistribute, and it'll make the duck nicer. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cool it, and then I'm just gonna take the skin off and pull some shreds, almost like pulled duck, and that's what's gonna go in the pasta. All right, so we're gonna get ready to make our brown chicken stock now. I'm gonna roast some chicken bones in the oven at 350 degrees. Generally, a good idea is what you want is you wanna make sure that those bones are brown. So take your time, try not to rush it. I think it's gonna take about 2.5 hours or so to do, so let's get it in the oven right now and we can get started. Now it's time to make the pasta. All right, so let me talk a little bit about what we have. I have 00 flour. Listen, if you don't have 00 flour, that's cool. You can use all-purpose flour. We have the 00 flour. To that, I'm gonna add, this is a quart of flour. I'm gonna add, let me make sure I do this right, a tablespoon. I'm using kosher salt today. You can use sea salt. And what I like to do is I wanna make sure that the salt is mixed into the flour. So my next step, now that we've mixed this all in, is to crack some eggs and add a little olive oil to the egg. I'm gonna do 6 eggs whole and 1 yolk. So I wanna talk a little bit about how we're gonna crack these eggs. It's really super important that we crack the egg without shells here. So let me see if I can do this. On a flat surface, and just open the egg. Okay, we do it again. I make sure I don't hit it on the rim of the bowl. And that's it. Now we go with 1 egg yolk. And what I'm gonna do is crack that and do the old transfer. Okay, the yolk is in. All right, so eggs are here. What we're gonna do is, I'm gonna go ahead and beat them. That's pretty good. So what I want here now is a tablespoon of olive oil. All right, in we go. not bad. Now, if you have rubber gloves, that may help. We're gonna go the old school way, and we're gonna do it with our hands. And this way you become one with your food. It's all right, you're at home. Eggs are in. And now, I just wanna move the flour over the top. And there's no perfect way to do this. At some point, your hands are gonna get messed up. And it's natural for the dough, I don't know if you can see my hands, it's gonna stick. So every now and then, as you have more flour on your hands, you're gonna scrape it down off your fingers, and you may lose a little bit, but it's okay. I promise you, you're still gonna eat well. To get it to come together more and to start to get elastic, we're gonna have to transfer it to our wooden board, which is a great place to knead dough, by the way. All right, so we've gone about as far as we can go in the bowl right now. The dough is a ball, which is kind of what we're looking for, right? So now, what I want to do, I want to gently flour the board. Not a lot, just to make sure that we can really knead this. So, to that, I start to use the palms of my hand, okay? And I'm going to just keep this moving. Now, it does add a little flour, but that's okay. So, get into it. The heel goes in, roll. And so what we're looking for here, as we keep doing this, we're gonna release the gluten in the flour. And that's what we want. And that's gonna transform the dough from being this sort of crummy type of dough ball to this really nice, elastic, smooth dough ball. And what I wanna do right now, I'm gonna go ahead and just get this into some plastic wrap. What we need to do is we're gonna get this in the fridge. It really needs to rest. And so a minimum of an hour, if you can give it 6 hours, if you can give it overnight, even better. This will be so much easier to roll out and will be such a better pasta if you give it a little time. So let's do a little plastic. Just like this. This goes in. Just like that, nice and tight. We don't want any air. No air for this guy. Beautiful. In the fridge. See you tomorrow. Check it out. You ever see Scarface? Say hello to my little pasta. So we have our duck leg here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull it. First thing we need to do is just pull the skin off. And what you're left with really is this really beautiful fork tender duck that you just pull with your hands like you would a pulled pork sandwich. And I'd say for the portion that we're gonna do today, these are big duck legs, but maybe about half of this duck leg. Let's see what we're left with. All right, so the rest of this may be like, this is very sort of fibrous and very difficult to deal with. This is really what you're looking for. If you see any nice meat that got stuck to the skin, you go back over to the skin and take a look. All right, so I'd say we're gonna use about half of this duck leg in the pasta. So there you are. Our duck leg is ready. We're gonna do our vegetables now for the pasta. We have sunchokes. This is a tuber. It's the root of a sunflower plant, and it's very, very similar to a potato, less starch though. We're gonna do this 2 different ways. We're gonna peel them, we're gonna cut them into some uniform pieces, and we're going to cook them by submerging them in olive oil. And that's how we'll sort of confit the vegetable, but without duck fat. And then we're gonna make chips, which we're gonna fry up in olive oil as well. We have red Swiss chard here. I'm gonna cut the stems like so. We're going to take the leaves off stems as well. We're gonna cook that 2 different ways. We're gonna blanch the leaves in boiling water and shock them in ice. And we're gonna do the same, almost the same thing with the stems. We're gonna cook them with a little vinegar and a little bit of water and a pat of butter and get the stems cooked separately. We want them to cook at different times. They don't take as long, the stems take a lot longer. And that then will get incorporate it into the pasta dish. So with that, let's start with the sunchoke. We're gonna peel it. Just get the bottom. Done. Sunchoke number 1. This we'll use for a chip. All right, done. With a sunchoke like this, you can cut. We're just looking for these nice pieces, and they will shrink a little bit after they're cooked. With a chip, I'm gonna use a Japanese mandolin. So just being careful, we wanna just run the sunchoke down the blade. Okay, chips and uniform pieces. And I'm gonna put this in our bowl. Just keep this over here. Now with the Swiss chard, what I wanna do is I want a stem, right? So I'd like that stem, but when I cook these leaves, you could run a knife down like this if you want. And that's really what I'm looking for, okay? Let me just show you what we're gonna do here. All right, and we're gonna just down the middle. And what I like to do, just because I'm decorating it, I'm making sort of these little diagonal cuts. And that's the way that looks. And with the leaves, you can easily do this with your hands, right? There's always a little green that stays on there. I like to use a knife, but if you feel more comfortable not getting a knife on that stem, that's what we're looking for. We're gonna go ahead and roll our pasta right now. So we have this beautifully rested dough, a little bit of flour, not too much. We're gonna start to brush different amounts of flour as we go. So we have our pasta machine here. We've got the widest setting. I'm gonna go ahead and cut just part of the dough. We're using a pizza cutter. You could use a knife. And then what I wanna do is make sure that we rewrap the dough that we're not using, because it will dry out if it doesn't, and this towel is just slightly moist. Just adding a little humidity right here in the corner. And so, I have a rolling pin here, and all I wanna do is flatten the dough a little bit so that I can go in the widest setting. Just before I go in, I just use a pastry brush or a painter's brush or whatever you have, or if you don't, just your hands. And we're gonna go on this widest setting. And in fact, there's a setting beyond 10 that's even a little wider. But we use the rolling pin to get us to that first set. We want to just relax the dough by putting it in twice. And now I'm going to go to number 10. And so I got to make sure I'm really on 10. I am. And we go. This is the first setting for stretching the dough. I typically try to do each side twice. Now I go to number 9. Okay. Gradually stretching the dough. Now I'm going to go to number 8. And this is coming along nicely. And then we're going to get ready to do the first fold. So I have this on 8. I'm going to go ahead and take this machine and bring it back to our first setting. What I want to do right now is I want to give the dough a fold. I typically do this once. This dough is rested really well. You may need to do this twice if you have dough that's not rested that well. But this fold will then make this even more elastic. So we go back to our widest setting. You may need to use your rolling pin just to give it a little flatness. All right, so back on the widest setting. The dough is folded. And now we're gonna stretch. We do twice. Now we go to number 10, which is the actual first setting. I go on the widest setting, which doesn't even have a number. That just allows me to get the dough in, right? I'm gonna try to let it get on number 9 now without flouring it, trying to keep it as straight as possible. And before I do number 8, I just wanna make sure that I give this a gentle brush of flour. As we are expanding the dough, it's getting a little more moist. So back in here. Oh. So there we go. Done. Now, since we're making tagliatelle, we now have the sheets that we want. We're gonna sort of even them out a little bit, and then I'm gonna attach the tagliatelle cutter to this, and we're gonna go ahead and cut tagliatelle. So we're gonna pass our sheets of dough through the tagliatelle cutter. So I've attached this secondary cutter on here, just a slightly thinner side. I just want to make sure that this goes in straight. So we go. All right. Beautiful. So I have a little semolina here, and this is just going to keep things from sticking. All right, so we are getting ready to blanch our Swiss chard. We're gonna cook the stems and we're gonna blanch the leaves. So first things first, let's do some leaves. We've got a nice pot of boiling water right here. Really important to salt the water liberally, right? And then what we wanna do is we take our ice water that we're gonna actually shock the Swiss chard leaves in, and we wanna season that as well. These leaves aren't gonna take very long at all because we've destemmed them. So I'm just gonna drop them in the water. No Swiss chard left behind. All right. So we're moving the vegetables, and what we're looking to do, we could easily saute these vegetables too. Right there, let me just grab my ice. Swiss chard is in. Ice water. Beautiful. Done. And all I'm doing now is just moving that around to make sure that I agitate this a little bit, because I don't want the hot Swiss chard on the top not to be submerged into the cool water, to get that really, A, to stop it from cooking, B, to bring out some of the natural chlorophyll that's in there. Now this is red Swiss chard, so there's a tendency to be a little darker than, say, a green Swiss chard with no red stems. And that's that. That bit is done. So right next to that, I have the stems right here, which I've got a little red wine vinegar in, and I've got a little bit of water. And all we're gonna do is evaporate this mix. These are finely cut, so it's not really gonna take that much time. We're not looking to, we want a little crunch. We don't wanna overcook this. We don't wanna lose the color. So all I'm gonna do here, same thing. I'm gonna season a little bit. I don't really think this needs pepper, just a touch of salt. And as soon as this evaporates, I'm gonna add just a touch of butter to this, because I wanna sort of glaze this. And we get that effect by either using something like chicken stock or water, along, in this case, with a little vinegar and then a pat of butter. And it finishes the cooking process, and it gives it a nice shine and a little richness. And we like to move this around a little bit just to keep the water now evaporating. And I need a little liquid, just like that. Pat of butter is in. And a little bit of that thick viscosity that the butter is adding to that. Done. All right, sunchokes that we confit in olive oil with a pinch of salt. Just like this, we submerge this in olive oil and we cook in the oven about 40 minutes at 350 degrees. Let the sunchokes now, we're just gonna gently cool them. They're ready to go. We're gonna pull them out of the oil and we're gonna add them into our pasta. So here we have our garlic puree. We have a bunch of garlic cloves that are submerged in olive oil, a pinch of salt. We've cooked this just the way that we did the sunchokes. We essentially confit this in olive oil. 30 to 40 minutes, 350 degrees until the garlic is tender. We don't want it too powerful. We're looking for a little sweetness. What I want to do right now is I want to pour some of that oil off. And we may introduce this oil again. The garlic is warm. What I want to do, I want to take this immersion blender, also known as a stick blender. We're going to go right in and go ahead and make a puree out of this. And that's it. Now I have a little excess oil here still, which is easily remedied by pouring this. And this oil is beautiful oil, actually. You can cook with this. You can saute whatever you like, chicken. You could make shrimp scampi with this oil. The oil is actually sweet garlic flavor, and what I've done here is just pasted that. If you want it finer, you can add it to a food processor. We want a little bit of sort of texture to this. This is gonna go into our pasta as well. I have a pot of oil on here that we just gauged at 325 degrees with a candy thermometer. We're gonna go ahead and drop these sunchokes in there, and we're just gonna fry them off real quick, get them crunchy, and this is gonna garnish our tagliatelle. So in it goes. Remember, it's always important, I submerge these in water. Make sure you dry these in a towel before they go in. The last thing you wanna do, well, is have a giant poof. You know, this doesn't just have to be for tagliatelle. If you wanna make some sunchoke chips at home because you're looking to make something that's crunchy that's not a potato, this is really great. Got a little less starch than potatoes, but it's absolutely wonderful. All right, so chips are nice and brown, looking absolutely lovely. We want to get them out now on a towel because I want to blot some of that oil, and we're going to season them right away, okay? Right here. Almost looks like garlic chips, but definitely not. Nice sweet flavor. And it's so important, when we treat these just like a potato, when you take potatoes out, you want to give them a nice sprinkle of salt. It just highlights and accentuates the flavor of the vegetable. And that's it. Sunchoke chips are done. So I have these chicken bones in the oven at 350 degrees for 2 hours. Nicely browned. What we're going to do now is we're going to transfer the bones into the stock pot. We're going to add our mirepoix vegetables. We have nice onions, carrots, celery, a little bit of bouquet garni here, which is a fancy French terminology for thyme, parsley, and bay leaves wrapped with some string and some garlic. We're going to transfer that into our pot with tomato paste and cold water. All right, now we're going to get our brown chicken stock going. I've got a nice big pan here, and we're going to roast our bones in the pan, meaning give it a little caramelization. I'm going to use a little bit of mild olive oil. I don't want anything too flavorful because, you know, it's sort of lost on that. Beautiful olive oil should sort of be used when you're finishing something. So we have these veg right here, carrots, celery, onions. I also have some garlic. We have our bouquet garni that we're going to throw in there. First thing we're going to do, we're just going to slide vegetables right in, along with the garlic. And we're just going to move this around. So, vegetables are toasting up nicely in the pan. All right, so now we have a little caramelization on these vegetables. We're not really looking to do much more than just give it a gentle brown color. Now what we want to do is we want to dissolve the tomato paste. I have here just about a quarter cup of paste. As soon as we dissolve that, what we want to do is we want to add our roasted bones. And it's really important at this point that we don't burn the paste. The paste goes on. All we want to do is just sort of dissolve it. It's going to cook out with the water anyway. That's just about where we want it. Now would be an absolutely perfect time to add these roasted bones. So in they go. Everybody goes in. Bouquet garni, a little parsley, thyme, and bay leaf wrapped. That's in. I like to put a little bit of peppercorn. I have a little white and black peppercorns right here. In they go. And in the back of the stove, this is my cold water that I have going on. We go right in and cover this. Beautiful. Now what we're going to do is gently bring this up to a simmer. And we're going to let this go probably about 5-6 hours. After it's done, we're going to strain it, we're going to refrigerate it, we're going to skim the top of the fat, and then we're going to reduce it after it's been in the refrigerator overnight. It's very, very important, if you can, to put your stock in the refrigerator overnight. Otherwise, you're going to have a tough time pulling the fat layer off. All right, as you can see, brown chicken stock takes a lot of work and has a lot of steps, but you don't have to worry. You can have wonderful stocks brought right to your home. If you log on to d'Artagnan.com, they make a wonderful brown veal stock called demi-glace. And you whip this right into your pasta. It's made out of veal, a slightly richer profile, but works wonderfully. They also sell organic chicken, duck, beef, truffles, mushrooms, caviar, a wide range of products that work wonderfully at home. Also, Boneworks makes a glace de poulet, which is brown chicken stock, the French terminology for brown chicken stock. You can whip this into the tagliatelle with duck and it works wonderfully. You can cut down on a little bit of time if somebody else is making a stock for you. All right, so now it's time to put this dish together. So I'm gonna start with our brown chicken stock. Our brown chicken stock was reduced down to a really viscous state, and I've taken a little bit of that whole stock from that giant pot and I've added here just to keep it warm. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this in our saute pan. And I put, you know, probably what amounts to about a cup of stock in there. To that, I'm gonna add some fresh thyme. And I'd say what I have here is about a half a teaspoon of fresh thyme. And I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic puree. So we roasted this garlic beautifully and we turned it into a puree. We don't need a lot. We need just a little bit for foundation. And what I'm gonna do, just to get that incorporated, is I use a small whisk. And this way the garlic flavor is in there. It's a nice, sweet, roasted garlic flavor. And so we have that going. Now, what I'd like to do is I have a nice salted water. I'm gonna add our fresh tagliatelle right into this salted water, which is really nicely, aggressively seasoned. Some red Swiss chard, some of our sunchokes, which we have that we roasted in the oven in olive oil, and our duck confit. So we're just gonna go ahead and place this right in. All these vegetables and the duck have all been cooked. And so all I'm doing right now is I'm basically glazing them in this rich brown stock. And that's it. Now, when we have this coating, I think I wanna add just another splash, and then we're gonna see, once I add the pasta here, we're gonna see whether or not we have the right coating for this. But this is the way this is coming together right now. It's really rich, it's really lovely. Very nice. I like to take just a spoon of that water right now. I don't want a lot. That water is aggressively seasoned, and all I'm looking for is just a little starch. And I don't want to cook this pasta too long, as I mentioned, because now I want to finish it inside of our brown chicken stock. So this feels really, really good. The noodles look great. Looks good. So it's okay for it to have a little bit of water. Again, that water is going to be like a liaison, tying everything together. That's what that looks like in the basket right here, right into the pasta. And now I just basically want to swirl. This is all about just getting this cooked to a really nice glazed, rich sauce that adheres to the noodle. The reason why we have it in the sauce now is we want to finish cooking the noodles, and we really want to pull all that liquid right into the noodle. The last thing we want to do after all this work is to just dump the pasta in a bowl and take everything and pour it on top. This really has to sort of really pull in, really coming in nicely. So, I want to just show you something. This is about where I have this right now, right? It's nicely glazed. I think what I want to do is add a splash of stock, and I'm going to turn it off because this is just about ready. Now what I want to do, I want to turn the heat off the pasta. And what I want to do is I want to shave in a little bit of Parmesan. This is Reggiano Parmesan cheese. I want to shave this in, and I want to add a little butter. And I want to emulsify the cheese and the butter together with the brown chicken stock. So I have a better chance of doing that. The last thing we need right now is aggressive heat. It's plenty hot in here right now. This doesn't need to be on any longer than it is. So I have that, and now I'm going to add a generous pat of butter in. And what we want to do is we just want to emulsify that in. So butter is almost melted, cheese is on. This looks great. And I also like to add just a splash of extra. This is a great time for extra virgin olive oil. Nice sheen, a little bit of flavor, a lot of flavor actually. And now we have it just about where we want it. Now we're gonna wanna check for seasoning. And that's what that looks like. Richly glazed, emulsified butter and cheese at the end. So this is when we wanna check for whether or not we have salt. So I'm gonna go ahead and taste this noodle. Very, very close. It could use a little bit of pepper. Not a lot, but we have hearty flavors. All right, so that's coming along nicely. Now what I want to do is I want to add the secret ingredient. Just a few shavings of nutmeg. Ties in beautifully with the duck. Just a touch. Doesn't need to be a lot. And then what we want to do is we want to finish with a little toasted pumpkin seed oil. And this almost kind of looks like balsamic vinegar, but it's roasted, toasted pumpkin seed extract in oil form. And it's absolutely, it's just a great flavor profile. And it complements this dish really well. Nice hearty flavors with the duck, Swiss chard, and the sunchokes. And that's it. Now what we want to do is we want to get this on a plate. Of just about everything in here. All right, so we're gonna finish this pasta right now with a little bit of shaved Reggiano Parmesan cheese, just a touch to accent the top. A little bit of duck confit, red Swiss chard stems, a little bit of sunchoke chip, just a few marjoram leaves. We drizzle just a little bit of pumpkin seed oil. Tagliatelle, duck confit, sunchokes, Swiss chard, pumpkin seed oil, marjoram, great fall flavors. It's one of my favorite things to eat. Go out, get yourself duck, make a little duck confit, throw it on some pasta. The most important thing is eat well, drink well, and see you soon.